today as our guest is Jeff Buongiorno, who is running for supervisor of elections in Palm Beach County. And we're going to try and find out from Jeff how he decided to do this, why he decided to do it, and what this entails, because I don't think most Americans really understand the importance of being a supervisor of elections. So, Jeff.
Yeah, well, thanks for the intro. Thanks for having me, sir. I'm running for Palm Beach County Supervisor of Elections to restore truth, accountability, and transparency to our elections. It's been decades since we've had a transparent, fully certifiable election, and the people are not aware. Recently, we made an adjustment to our U.S. Code 611C3. It's Title 18 U.S. Code 611C3. And basically what it says, believe it or not, is that citizenship is a state of mind. And if an illegal alien reasonably believes that they have the right to vote, it's not a crime.
Illegals, if you will, or would-be illegals at that point, migrating north, are being instructed how they can get into the United States and ultimately vote. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, this is a coup d'état. This is treason. Our government's allowing it. They're using NGOs as their basic army, and our own taxpayer dollars are funding it. So you have what's even worse than the memo that Maduro's handed out is the cell phone, and they handed cell phones with apps with applications on it. One of them is called the CBP1 app, and that's Customs Border Patrol. And what it does is basically it's Expedia for illegals. It tells them where to go, whether it's Texas, whether it's Eagle Pass, whether it's Arizona, and it's a concierge where they have an appointment, and they're taking down their information of the illegal who's entering, and it's going into a federal database, which is very interesting because there's a method to verify voters, part of the HAVV, what you mentioned, and this methodology is to use a 4-digit code, the last 4 digits of a social security number, and you can register to vote. Now, there's no citizenship check, and there's no ID. So simply the feds, they receive data, transactions, and they pretty much approve. Yes, the person's deceased, or it's a good registration. The problem with that is at the local level, the position I'm running for, supervisor of elections in Palm Beach County, they're blindly accepting this registration. So there's no citizen check. This has been going on as far back as I can track is to 2011, and since 2011, there's been 1.2 million transactions only in Florida alone. Now, not everyone was approved, but
the vast majority.
Yeah, the vast majority probably were. And you can also graph this out, and you can see that certain states are under attack. Texas is under attack. Now, I put some information out on social media, and it got retweeted, and Elon Musk commented on it, and there were 65 million views, and then President Trump and Mike Johnson held a press conference, and they spoke about it, and then the House put forth a bill that we must have, and that's not going anywhere. But the problem with that is believable. Yeah, and the Secretary of State of Texas, Jay Nelson, she put out a memo, a press release, saying that the information on the internet is false, and the wording that she used was very suspect. She said, while Texans must show a photo ID to vote, while individuals can register and vote with a social security number, a 4-digit code. So I believe that those are very telling words.
Now, at the same time, isn't it fair to say that certainly Florida, I assume Texas, most other states stipulate that in order to vote in the state, you must be a United States citizen?
Yeah, well, that's Article 6, Section 2 of the Florida State Constitution, and there is a statute that states that. Here's how it works.
Before you go on, so effectively, the federal government is working to undermine enforcement of the law in terms of citizenship.
I believe 100%. That's they're
So-
orchestrating this
so
invasion. Why
this-
wouldn't they?
So that means that these people walk into the United States, they get this number. When it comes to election day in November, they show up and they say, well, I don't have a photo ID for a driver's license, or I don't have another form of ID, but I have this number. And if you call the Social Security agency, they'll tell you, I'm good to go. Is that right?
Close. Here's how it works. So you can request a vote by mail ballot and only produce that 4-digit code. And in Florida, you can request up to 3, not just 1, 3. So here you have a nameless, faceless person who's only reduced to a 4-digit code who might not even ever see that ballot. In Florida, we have what's called third-party voter registration organizations. And it's very, so let's back up 1 second. So here you have a registration only using a 4-digit code. Now they enter into the voter registration book and they request a vote by mail ballot from the internet. They also send in the ballot and they write their 4-digit code down and they sign it. Now we know signature verification is very stringent. So these voters are nameless and faceless. Now, what you mentioned was, you made a great point. Well, I want to go to the poll. Guys like, you and I and everyone in this room, we want to go vote in person, right? We're proud. We know we saw it. What happens the first thing you walk in? They ask you for a photo ID. And I can't say, well, can I get 2 more ballots from my friends in the car? Well, no, you can't. You can get 1. So I believe that the laws have been abridged to accommodate these, what the administration calls newcomers, to make it easier for them to register. But the most alarming thing is, I believe that the third-party voter registration organizations, also known as NGOs, that's a Florida thing. Well, what do? The period closes where you can't register, and it's kind of like Antifa changes uniforms and they're Hamas, pro-Hamas. Well, what are they going to do? They're going to change their uniforms. They're not going to register voters. They're going to go around and they're going to collect those ballots. And they have 10 days to turn in. So they have all the pedigree of the person that they're registering from the CBP1 app and from the voter registration form. So now they have a 10-day period to put that in the database, whatever they want to do. So now they know where to get the votes from. So this is how the ballot harvesting schemes are orchestrated.
What can we do?
That the administrative state is not going to like this, but it's very simple. We wipe out every database, every voter registration database in the country, and everyone patriotically and peacefully, they go and they register and they show photo ID and they show proof of citizenship, or else we're not going to have a fair election. That is the only way. That's their ammunition. The machines and everything else, that's the weaponry. But we could take the ammunition away from the bad actors by simply stating that our voter rolls are tainted. And if you're a supervisor of elections, if you're a certifying official, how can you certify that the election was legally run when you're violating? You don't know it. You can't certify, right? Cert is the truth.
Well, listen, this is the critical question, because I agree with you. What you've outlined or stipulated is a great solution. It's desperately needed. In fact, I would argue that in-person voting is the only form of voting we should have, with the exception of people serving in the regular armed forces or activated from the reserves, serving in the regular armed forces overseas, who cannot come back and vote. That's it.
Well,
now, let me finish here.
Yeah.
But my concern, though, is you're supervisor of elections, and you're between now and election day, you're probably not going to have that action take place. We're not going to wipe out all these voter bases, although we should, and start from scratch. Instead, you're going to have to deal with the reality that you're getting votes that you can't verify from American citizens, especially absentee ballots. Correct?
That's correct.
So what do you do?
Well, this is a constitutional crisis. I believe there's no other alternative to have a true and fair election. And it has to go back to the elected officials who are certifying. They should speak up and say, I can't certify an election. I'm putting my name on it. And guess what? In Palm Beach County, they don't use wet ink. They stamp. There's a stamp. So, this is a constitutional crisis. It should go to the governor. It should go to the governor of every state, because it's just not possible to have a fair election.
Well, in that connection, is it possible for Governor DeSantis to announce, I'm decreeing that we are going to re-register or register anew for the federal election in November? So everyone today who is a legal resident of Florida and is a U.S. citizen must go to their respective location, which you will be provided, and there you must register anew. And if you're not registered at this time, when you show up in November, you will not vote.
Hey, if the governor can
Could he do that?
if the governor can lock down the state of Florida for COVID, I'm sure he could do that.
Yeah, I think that's a critical point. Everybody needs to take that on board. If the governor of a state can lock everyone down or liberate everyone from confinement, he can damn well do this.
Well said.
So you heard all the talk. Let's see exactly what this is. And what we have here is the explanation of Help America Vote Verification System. In August 2004, this was established. States must only submit a request to us for new voters who do not present a valid driver's license during the voter registration process. Have verifies the accuracy of the name, date of birth, and last four digits of a social security number submitted, and sends an indication of whether our records show the individual as deceased. So the basic concept here is this is supposed to come from the motor vehicle database, and the states are supposed to send it up. But according to my sources, this is being abused in other ways with other data inputs. So let's just take a look. It gives us all of the transactions. So I'm going to take a look January 2011 to present. And I'm just concerned about Florida right now. We have 1.2 million transactions. Almost 400,000 were non-match, as you can see on top. 846,000 were matched. Only 313 of these 1.2 million are deceased. So this is a lot of data transactions just to get to 313 voters being deceased. So you can look for yourself. You can go to ssa.gov/open/have, and then from there you can navigate and drop down. You could see different weeks, and it's all there. You can't dispute this.
Thank you. Sir, state your name. You're recognized.
William Voltmer. My topic today is voting by non-citizens.
Sir, that is not part of our jurisdiction. I'm so sorry, but I appreciate you coming forward today, but that's not something that we can take in our public comment. Thank you anyway, sir. What is the next name, Commissioner Weiss?
Michael Zoran.
July 3rd, 2023, Judge Mark Walker ruled that Florida must allow non-citizens to register citizens as workers for third-party voter registration organizations. Next, you'll hear 5 minutes of lobbying efforts in Tallahassee from May 24th, I believe, 2022.
Okay, yeah, we're on the same place. So what we're saying is for those folks that are out soliciting, advocating, encouraging folks to register to vote, that doesn't apply to them. It's only at the moment where they're going to collect and handle that potential voter's personal information that we want you to be a U.S. citizen.
Representative Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Why does this prohibition apply to all people who aren't U.S. citizens?
Representative McClure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I would say that there's another portion that discusses other folks that we don't want handling it, but specifically for the U.S. citizenship, these are U.S. elections. And again, we're not prohibiting someone's First Amendment right to go and advocate and solicit and be a part of a team that's encouraging folks to register. We're just simply saying, in an abundance of caution for that potential voter's personal information, that at the time they hand over that sacred information, that it goes to a U.S. citizen for collection and handling purposes only.
Further questions of the sponsor. Representative Bartleman, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If your concern is about security, why wouldn't you allow non-U.S. citizens who have been vetted, like legal permanent residents, to collect and handle registration applications? They have other jobs where they get the same sensitive information.
Representative McClure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, as it relates to other jobs, I would imagine there's processes and protocol in place, whereas with third-party organizations or any organization that may or may not have that. So again, not prohibiting them from participating. I would imagine to the extent that a third-party voter registration organization is wanting to, their mission is to register voters, having folks advocate, that's wonderful. It's just at the moment of collection and handling that we're going to ask them to be a U.S. citizen.
Representative Waldron, I think saw your hand. I see Representative Woodson. Okay, Representative Woodson, we'll go to you next. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative McClure, can you clarify for me this question? Are non-U.S. citizens allowed to work for the Department of Elections, for the divisions of elections?
Representative, is that a question to the bill? You're asking him whether non-citizens are allowed to work for the Department of Corrections? I'm sorry, Representative McClure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bill doesn't contemplate that, but I believe they are, yes.
Representative Woodson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can you explain why this bill makes this distinction based simply on whether someone is a U.S. citizen?
Representative McClure, I think that's been asked and answered, but if you'd like to take another stab at an answer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, sir. I think it has been asked and answered, but again, we're not saying that you can't advocate, solicit, be a part of a team to get folks to register. We're just saying when that voter, this is to protect the voter's personal information. At the moment that they submit that information to a third-party organization, we want it to go in the hands of a U.S. citizen.
Further questions? Representative Waldron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So are you saying that a non-U.S. citizen who's employed by the Division of Elections or the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles or the County Tax Collector's Office could be seen and processing voter registration applications with voters' personal information for their job, but they would be prohibited from volunteering at a voter registration drive with a third-party voter registration organization where they'd be collecting and handling this information?
Representative McClure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What I would say is I think in those specific instances that you refer to, whether the Department of State or the DMV, et cetera, there's processes, procedures, sometimes background checks. There's clear operating procedures on how you are to comport yourself when handling that sensitive information. In contrast, with a third-party voter organization, none of those processes are prescribed here. And so I think the safest thing for us to do, again, in an abundance of caution for that potential voter to protect their personal information. You know, there's plenty of law elsewhere on the books where we take personal information theft, identity theft, you know, that's something that we take very seriously. And so we want to protect that voter's information. And so as a function of that, we make that distinction here that when they collect and handle, we want it to be in a U.S. citizen's hands.
Despite numerous requests across multiple jurisdictions, not one single SOE has provided any information as per the HAVE website stating that we must contact the appropriate voter registration official in the state. Here you have Article 6, Section 2 says every citizen, every voter must be a citizen, must be at least 18, and must live in the county where they vote. Then we have, to back it, we have Statute 97.041, which says basically the same thing. You must be a legal resident of the state of Florida You must be a legal resident of the county in which you are registered, and you must be a citizen of the United States. The bottom line is that these elections,
It's not possible to have a fair election.
Well, in that connection, is it possible for Governor DeSantis to announce, I'm decreeing that we are going to re-register or register anew for the federal election in November. So everyone today who is a legal resident of Florida and is a U.S. citizen must go to their respective location, which you will be provided, and there you must register anew. And if you're not registered at this time, when you show up in November, you will not vote.
Hey, if the governor can
Could he do that?
if the governor can lock down the state of Florida for COVID, I'm sure he could do that.
Yeah, I think that's a critical point. Everybody needs to take that on board. If the governor of a state can lock everyone down or liberate everyone from confinement, he can damn well do this.
Well said.